I am Officer Loangus. Stops being audio and video recorded. I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so I was
behind you the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you run the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep. Let me just get this for you out.
You what?
I'm just going to get this out for you.
Okay.
Would you explain that to me a little bit further? So in Pennsylvania, when you're stuck like in the intersection, you have to make the left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done?
You're not supposed to block an intersection like that in Washington, so just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation, and then you're running a red light, so it's another ticketable offense. So you're not supposed to proceed into the intersection until you can go, because a lot of people do what you just did, right? It's like you're sitting in the intersection waiting, and then turns, then you're blocking, so.
Yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding, because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn. Mm-hmm. So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through. Oh. Did you see that?
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, like right before I made the turn, there was someone who made a right. They didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go, so you don't get stuck. Let's see.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up. And not...
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation, because you're either going to back up into somebody, or you're going to run a red light. So, or you'll be sitting in an intersection. There's not really a great option there.
Yeah, I was just sliding into the crosswalk, so... where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have like crosswalks.
Oh,
so even if you're kind of slightly, there's a little bit more leeway as well. Like there are a few lines. Like there's one white line and there's another one. Mm-hmm. Like there's like a certain margin from which you can actually kind of put your vehicle, place your vehicle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that, proceeding through, and you don't when you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage. I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to.
Oh no, I can find it for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 1 second. That looks good on a Hyundai. I don't see Pennsylvania registration like at all. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone unless you can clearly just clear it right away. So
then basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time, but
it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. But well, except for the fact that I was blocking the crosswalk, which is what I went through.
And states vary from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
I'm actually just from a very rural area, so we just don't have crosswalks. Oh. Unless I visit an area where there are crosswalks, and then it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
I do apologize if I was asking you too many questions about the law. I wasn't trying to
No, not at all. Like I understand you're not from here, so if you don't, a lot of people don't know a bunch of laws. Like I only know it because this is what I do, but if you're ever curious on any more laws, just RCW, and they can be hard to read because it's in like legal language, but hope that helps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hello. How y'all doing? Good. Take your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on the van, man. He's right up on the back of that van. You're over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're scanning.
What's WSU?
University, basically. That is SWAT team area.
So I'm having a hard time reading because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going there? Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
We're flying to let you drive hours.
Hours, days.
Drive.
Okay.
What if I told you that a man drove across the entire country with his father, making small talk about the scenery and their plans for Christmas, while law enforcement in multiple states was closing in on him for one of the most disturbing acts in recent memory? What if I told you that hours after taking 4 young lives, he walked through the aisles of a Costco, just another face in the crowd? And what if I told you that the people who survived that night would carry a weight so heavy that speaking about it would take years? Before we go further, if you're drawn to cases that challenge everything you thought you knew about human behavior, cases that don't just tell you what happened, but make you question how it could happen at all, then you need to subscribe to Dark Trail Files right now. Hit that subscribe button, because we don't just cover true crime, we examine the fractures in reality that these cases reveal. You won't want to miss what's coming. This is the story of Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho murders. But this isn't just about what he did. It's about what happened in the spaces between violence and justice, in the hours that followed horror, and in the years that stretched between loss and a courtroom. This is about time itself becoming a witness. November 13th, 2022. Moscow, Idaho. A college town where students filled the streets on weekend nights, where houses full of friends felt safe, where locked doors were sometimes an afterthought. The kind of place where parents sent their children believing they'd be protected by distance from big city dangers. A community of roughly 25,000 people, swelling when the University of Idaho was in session. The kind of town where everyone knew someone who knew someone else. Connected, close-knit, safe. On the second and third floors of an off-campus home on King Road, 6 roommates lived their lives. The house was typical for student housing. A bit worn, a bit crowded, but it was theirs. Kaylee Goncalves, 21 years old, had already secured a job in Austin, Texas. She was about to graduate and start her career. Madison Mogen, also 21, was her best friend since 6th grade. They'd grown up together, shared everything together, planned futures together. Xana Kernodle, 20, was a junior studying marketing. She had a warmth that made her everyone's friend. And Ethan Chapin, also 20, was Xana's boyfriend. A freshman with a goofy sense of humor and a presence that filled rooms with lightness. They had plans. All of them. The kind of mundane, beautiful plans that young people make. Graduation, career moves, continued relationships, trips they want to take. The unremarkable dreams that make up a life. On that Saturday night, they were doing what college students do. Kaylee and Madison went to a local bar. Xana and Ethan attended a fraternity party. They came home at different times. They said goodnight to each other. They locked their bedroom doors, as students sometimes do for privacy. They went to sleep. The attack happened in the early hours of Sunday morning, likely between 4 and 4:45. Methodical, brutal. Someone entered through a sliding door on the second floor. Rooms separated by walls and floors became scenes of unimaginable violence. The weapon was a large fixed-blade knife, the kind designed for hunting, for cutting through thick material with minimal effort, the kind that requires intention to purchase and carry. Kaylee and Madison were on the 3rd floor, sharing a room as they often did. They were attacked in their sleep. Xana and Ethan were on the 2nd floor. Evidence suggests Xana fought back. She had defensive wounds. She tried to stop what was happening. Ethan, a tall young man who played in the university's club sports, was also killed. The coroner would later confirm that the force used was extreme, that this wasn't tentative or uncertain. This was violent in a way that suggested rage or determination, or perhaps something colder than either. 2 roommates on the 1st floor survived, but survival is not the same as being spared. One of them, Dylan Mortensen, saw something that night. She'd heard sounds, crying, maybe a voice saying something like, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She'd opened her door to check, and that's when she saw him. A figure, male, taller than her, but not exceptionally tall, athletic build, wearing a mask, and bushy eyebrows. The kind of detail that seems almost trivial until you realize it's the kind of thing that sticks in memory when everything else becomes a blur of terror. He walked past her, toward the sliding door. He left. Dylan stood frozen. Every instinct in her body was screaming danger, but her conscious mind hadn't yet caught up to what was happening. She locked her door. She texted friends. She didn't call 911. And for that, she would be judged by thousands of people who weren't there, who've never experienced that specific brand of paralyzing fear, who've never had to make decisions while their nervous system is in complete crisis mode. She waited, in the dark, in the silence that followed, not knowing if he was still in the house, not knowing if opening her door would make her the next target, not knowing that upstairs, her friends were already gone. The human brain in crisis doesn't follow the logic we assign to it in retrospect. It follows survival instinct. And sometimes survival means becoming very, very still. It wasn't until hours later, nearly noon, that the truth began to surface. One of the surviving roommates felt something was wrong. She called a friend. That friend came over. And then came the call that would shatter a community.
Number 13, 2022. 911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the light, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Hi,
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, but we gotta go check. No, we have to. Is he passed out? What's wrong? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you. What's wrong?
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20. Here's one.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Hey, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
Please, talk to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Hello.
Okay. I've already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have it. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, we have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay. 11:59 a.m.
Listen to the hesitation, the confusion, the operator trying to understand, the friend trying to explain what they're seeing without fully processing it themselves. There's a rhythm to emergency calls, a pattern operators are trained to recognize. Panic has a sound. Shock has a sound. This call has both, layered with something else. Disbelief. The caller is not inside the house. They're outside. They've been asked to come check on friends, and they've encountered something their mind is struggling to accept. Someone is unconscious. Someone is not breathing. The details are fractured, incomplete. The operator is asking standard questions, but the answers aren't following standard patterns. There's confusion about how many people are injured, about what exactly happened, about whether this is a medical emergency or something else entirely. The word that hasn't been said, yet hangs in the air like a weight waiting to fall. The word that, once spoken, will change everything. By the time officers arrived, the scene they encountered was beyond what any small-town department prepares for. The first responders who entered that house saw something that would stay with them forever. Blood had soaked through floors, from the third level down to the second. Victims were found in their beds, in their rooms. Lives ended with such force that first responders struggled to assess the full extent of injuries. Faces were unrecognizable from the trauma. The coroner would later confirm that significant force had been used, that the weapon had been wielded with purpose. This wasn't random. This wasn't a home invasion gone wrong. This wasn't panic. This was deliberate. Someone had entered that house with intention, had moved through it with purpose, had made choices about who lived and who died, and then had left, closing the door behind them, returning to whatever waited outside those walls. Here's what makes this case crawl under your skin and take up permanent residence. While investigators were processing that scene, while families were receiving the worst phone calls of their lives, while a community was beginning to realize something unspeakable had happened in their safe college town, while the country was starting to hear the first reports of a quadruple homicide in Idaho, Bryan Kohberger was going about his day. Hours after the attacks, surveillance cameras captured him here, not hiding in shadows, not fleeing in panic, just shopping, moving through aisles. A PhD student running errands. This is what horror looks like when it doesn't announce itself. Watch how ordinary this appears. The fluorescent lights humming overhead. The weekend shoppers pushing carts. The checkout lines moving at their steady pace. He blends perfectly. There's no nervousness in his movements. No visible signs of someone who just committed an act of extreme violence. His posture is relaxed. His pace is normal. He's just another customer in a sea of customers, indistinguishable from anyone else there. This is the unsettling truth about monsters. They don't always look like what we expect. They don't wear their darkness on the outside. They shop at the same stores we shop at. They drive the same roads we drive. They occupy the same spaces we occupy, breathing the same air, existing in the same mundane reality. And we never know. We pass them in aisles. We stand behind them in lines. We share space with them and never feel the danger, because danger, real danger, doesn't always announce itself with obvious signs. Bryan Kohberger was 28 years old at the time of the murders. He was a criminology PhD student at Washington State University, less than 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. A 15-minute drive. Close enough that the border between Washington and Idaho became almost meaningless. He studied criminal behavior, decision-making processes, the psychology behind why people commit crimes. His area of focus was specifically on criminal decision-making and burglary-type crimes. He was writing his dissertation on these topics. He was teaching undergraduate students about the criminal mind. Students who knew him described someone intelligent but awkward. Someone who clearly had the intellectual capacity for advanced academic work but struggled with social connections. A teaching assistant who would sometimes mislead his colleagues, having them complete work that was meant for him. Someone who talked often about wanting a girlfriend, bringing it up in conversations repeatedly. Someone who seemed to want connection, but didn't quite know how to achieve it authentically. One classmate noticed something else in October and November of 2022. Injuries. A large scratch on Kohberger's face that looked exactly like it had been made by fingernails. The kind of scratch you get from someone desperately trying to fight back. Wounds on his knuckles, visible on 2 separate occasions. When asked about them, Kohberger's explanation was simple. He'd been in a car accident. The classmate thought nothing more of it at the time. Why would they? People get into car accidents. People get scratches. Without context, these details are just details. But in hindsight, they become something else entirely. Another detail that would later seem significant. Kohberger liked to discuss his area of study with classmates. Criminal decision-making. Burglary. He would talk about these topics beyond what seemed necessary for academic purposes. He seemed fascinated not just with the mechanics of crime, but with the emotions involved. What it felt like to commit a crime. What criminals were thinking when they made certain decisions. The conversations were academic in nature, but there was an intensity to his interest that some found notable. For weeks after the murders, law enforcement worked in near silence. The community demanded answers. Families pleaded for information. The national media descended on Moscow, turning a quiet college town into the center of a true crime frenzy. Rumors spread. Speculation ran wild. Internet sleuths analyzed every piece of available information, sometimes causing more harm than help. But investigators knew that revealing too much could compromise everything they were building. They were building a case piece by piece. Cell tower data showing phone locations. Surveillance footage from businesses and homes. Traffic cameras capturing vehicles at specific times. And crucially, a white Hyundai Elantra that kept appearing near the crime scene. Not just on the night of the murders, but before. Multiple times before. As if someone had been observing. Learning patterns. Planning. Then there was the DNA. At the crime scene, investigators found a knife sheath. The kind designed to hold a large fixed-blade knife. The kind you don't accidentally drop. On that sheath on the button snap was DNA. Touch DNA, which is more challenging to work with than blood or other biological samples, but present nonetheless. Not a match in any criminal database, which made sense given that Kohberger had no criminal record. But it was enough to begin a different kind of search. The FBI used genealogical databases, the same technology that had solved cold cases across the country by identifying distant relatives of unknown suspects. They uploaded the DNA profile to databases like GeneMatch, where people voluntarily share their genetic information for ancestry purposes. This practice has been controversial. Some argue it violates privacy expectations. Others argue it's a powerful tool for justice. Regardless of the ethical debates, it worked. They found relatives. Distant at first, then closer. They narrowed the pool. They built a family tree. And they focused on Bryan Kohberger. By mid-December, surveillance had begun. But there was a complication. Kohberger had left Washington to return to his parents' home in Pennsylvania for the holidays. He'd driven across the country with his father, who had flown out to help with a long drive back east. This meant surveillance had to be coordinated across multiple states. Local police in Pennsylvania began watching the Kohberger family home, watching Bryan's movements, documenting his behavior. And his behavior was notable. Multiple times, investigators observed him wearing surgical gloves while handling trash. He would place items in his separate Ziploc bags, then put those bags into a neighbor's garbage can rather than his family's own bin. He was being careful, tried to avoid leaving biological evidence where it could be easily collected. But he wasn't careful enough. Investigators retrieved the items. They found DNA that matched the profile from his father, confirming the familial relationship. They had their man. Now, they just needed the right moment to make the arrest. On the drive across the country, Indiana State Police pulled them over. Twice. Once for following too closely. Once for speeding. The officer who approached the vehicle had no idea who he was interacting with. He was doing his job, enforcing traffic laws, interacting with what seemed like an ordinary father and son on a road trip. But listen to this interaction, knowing what we know now.
I am Officer Loangus. Stops being audio and video recorded. I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so I
was behind you the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically, you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you run the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep. We just get this for you out.
You what?
I'm just gonna get this out for you.
Okay.
Would you explain that to me a little bit further? So in Pennsylvania, when you're stuck like in the intersection, you have to make the left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done? Just
You're not supposed to block an intersection like that in Washington, so just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation, and then then you're running a red light, so it's another ticketable offense. So you're not supposed to proceed into the intersection until you can go, because a lot of people do what you just did, right? Is like you're sitting in the intersection waiting, and then turns, then you're blocking, so.
yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn. So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through.
Oh.
Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, like right before I made the turn, there was someone who made a right, and they didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go, so you don't get stuck. Let's see.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up and not.
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation, because you're either going to back up into somebody, or you're going to run a red light. So, or you're going to be sitting in an intersection. There's not really a great option there.
Yeah, I was just sliding into the crosswalk, so. Yeah, where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have like crosswalks.
Oh,
so even if you're kind of slightly, there's a little bit more leeway as well. Like there are a few lines. Like there's one white line and there's another one. Like there's like a certain margin from which you can actually kind of put your vehicle, place your vehicle.
Yeah. So I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that, proceeding through, and you don't when you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage. I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to.
Oh no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah. One second. That looks good on a Hyundai. I don't see Pennsylvania registration like at all. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone unless you can clearly just clear it right away. So
then basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time, but
it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. But well, except for the fact that I was blocking the crosswalk, which is I went through.
And states vary a lot from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
I'm actually just from a very rural area, so we just don't have crosswalks.
Oh.
Unless I visit an area where there are crosswalks, and then it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
I do apologize if I was asking you too many questions about the law. I wasn't trying to
No, not at all. Like I understand you're not from here, so if you don't, a lot of people don't know a bunch of laws. Like I only know it because this is what I do, but yeah. If you're ever curious on any more laws, just RCW, and they can be hard to read because it's in like legal language, but hope that helps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hello. How y'all doing? Good. Take your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on the van, man. He's right up on the back of that van. You're over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU. And
what's WSU?
That is SWAT team area.
So I'm having a hard time reading because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going there? Oh. Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're finally let you drive hours.
Hours, days.
Right.
Okay.
The conversation is polite, professional, routine. Kohberger sits in the passenger seat, calm, even engaging with the officer briefly when spoken to. His father does most of the talking, as fathers often do when their adult children are with them. They explain they're heading home for the holidays. The officer runs their information. Everything comes back clean. No warrants. No red flags in the system. They receive warnings, not tickets. The stop lasts minutes. Paperwork is completed, and then they continue. Destination, Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, investigators in multiple states are coordinating, watching, waiting for the exact right moment. December 30th, 2022. 6 weeks after the murders. Pennsylvania State Police Special Emergency Response Team and FBI agents executed the arrest warrant. They surrounded the Kohberger family home early in the morning. When they entered, they found Bryan in the kitchen. He was wearing a shirt and shorts, and he was wearing surgical gloves. He was in the process of putting trash in his separate Ziploc bags. Even at that moment, even knowing that law enforcement was at his door, he was still trying to control what evidence might be collected. The arrest was smooth. No resistance. No dramatic confrontation. Just compliance. They placed him in custody. They transported him for initial processing. And then came the first interview. The only real conversation investigators would ever have with him about the case. The interview happened quickly at the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks. Officers introduced themselves. Moscow Police Corporal Brett Payne and Idaho State Police Lieutenant Darren Gilbertson. When they said their names, Kohberger told Payne that he looked familiar. It was an odd comment. Payne had been one of the lead investigators on the case, but there was no clear reason Kohberger would recognize him unless he'd been following media coverage closely. They started with small talk. They asked if he was okay. Kohberger said he was worried about his parents, about his dog, about how the police operation to arrest him had affected his family. The investigators engaged in more small talk. They asked about his drive across the country with his father. Kohberger talked about it, shared details about the trip, seemed willing to converse about neutral topics. Kohberger also mentioned his interest in criminal justice, talked about his studies, his academic focus. The investigators let him talk, building rapport, creating an atmosphere where he might feel comfortable opening up. But then they shifted. They asked if he knew what had happened in Moscow. Kohberger's response was measured. He said he'd receive an alert on his phone from Washington State University. He was aware of a homicide. Just one homicide, he said. Not 4, but aware that something had happened. The investigators pressed slightly, asked if he wanted to talk about what had happened, about the murders. And that's when everything changed. Kohberger's response was immediate and clear. Well, I think I would need a lawyer. The investigators tried once more, asked if he was sure. Kohberger reiterated. He wanted to talk to an attorney. The interview ended there. The recording stopped, and Bryan Kohberger would not speak about the case again for years. The surviving roommates became crucial witnesses, carrying information that could help solve the case, but also carrying trauma that would reshape their entire lives. Bethany Funk, who had been on the first floor that night, spoke with investigators. This footage shows the impossible position survivors find themselves in, trying to recall details of a night they're still processing.
She just knocked on my door, I think, during the night. I had my business and
Okay. Then what happened after that?
I just went to bed, and then I woke up, but I was like half asleep, and I just thought I saw like a firework or something, like it just sparkled, like under my door. And then I thought I heard like something cut the wall, and then Murphy barked, but I thought people were just making, like just maybe like, and Ethan was here or something and knocked something over, because he's usually loud in the kitchen upstairs.
Okay. So what do you mean by you heard a firework?
It sounded like a little firework, and then there was like a spark. I went by my, like, I'm on the bottom floor.
Okay.
And so it kind of looked like it came down there, but I don't know.
So is Murphy your dog?
Kaylee's dog.
Kaylee's dog?
Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend.
Okay. So you heard Murphy bark right after you heard what you thought was a firecracker?
Yeah, something like that. Like, I don't know, dogs bark at random things. And sometimes when he's happy, he'll bark.
Okay. It didn't sound like an angry growl or anything like that, just a bark?
I don't really know. I was like half asleep.
Okay.
It just sounded like a bark.
So, hear the firework, and I see a spark underneath the door. Murphy barks. What'd you hear after that?
Pretty much nothing. That's it.
Okay. And you thought maybe someone was just in the kitchen at that point?
Yeah, just like someone accidentally fell into the table or something.
Okay.
And she was like, this would be...
Do you know about what time that might have been? Do you have any idea?
4 or something. I tried to call all of them at like 4:20ish. on that time and no one was answering. I thought they just went to bed or something.
Okay. So what happened after that?
Called me and she said she thinks she saw someone. And I didn't know like really what to think of it because sometimes we think we hear things a lot in the house, but it's usually just Ethan walking around. But she came, I told her to come in my room and she could sleep with me and we locked the door and just stay in there just in case if there was anything, and that's all I know. And then I fell back asleep.
You didn't hear anything else? Mm-hmm. No one else talking? Okay. Did you get to your room then? Mm-hmm. Okay. What time do you think she got in your room?
Around 4:20, 4:30.
Okay, about the same time.
Yeah.
Where's her room located to yours?
I'm the only one on the bottom floor, right by the front door.
Okay.
And then you go up the stairs, and Xana's room, and Xana's room, the kitchen, and then upstairs is mine and Kim's.
Okay. And where's the room?
Right by the kitchen.
Right by the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Okay. And did she say anything to you when she got into the room?
She said she thought she saw me, but I didn't know what to think of it. I was like still half asleep, and I was like, I didn't know what to, I don't know. It didn't sound like I didn't hear screams, I didn't hear anything, so I didn't really know.
Okay. Okay. But obviously she didn't say anything more than she just saw someone.
No, that's all I remember.
Bethany walked investigators through the timeline with as much detail as she could remember, where everyone had been earlier in the evening, when they'd come home, what she remembered hearing or not hearing during the night. Her voice carries the tremor of someone whose entire sense of safety has been shattered. She's trying to help, trying to be useful, trying to provide the information that might lead to justice. But she's also trying to process something her mind hasn't fully accepted yet. The investigators are gentle but thorough. They need details, times, sounds, anything that might establish a timeline or reveal a pattern. Bethany does her best, but there's only so much she knows. She was asleep during the attack. She didn't hear screams, didn't hear struggle. The house was large enough and the rooms separated enough that horror could unfold upstairs while life continued normally below. It's a detail that makes the whole thing more surreal. That violence could be happening floors away and leave no obvious trace for those not directly targeted. Dylan Mortensen's account was even more harrowing. She had seen him, the figure in her house. She'd heard noises that woke her. Around 4 a.m, she'd heard what sounded like crying coming from Xana's room. Then a male voice saying something like, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." She'd opened her door to check. And that's when she saw him. A male figure walking toward her, toward the sliding glass door. Taller than her, which would put him around 5'10" or taller. Not muscular, but athletically built. Wearing black clothing. Wearing a mask that covered his nose and mouth. But his eyebrows were visible. Bushy eyebrows. He walked past her. She stood frozen in her doorway. He exited through the slider, and she locked herself in her room. For years, people would ask why she didn't call 911 immediately, why she waited until nearly noon. The question itself reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of trauma and how the human nervous system responds to immediate threat. The brain in crisis does not follow the logic we assign to it in retrospect. It doesn't think I should call for help. It thinks I need to survive the next moment. And sometimes survival means staying absolutely still, staying quiet, not attracting attention, waiting to see if the threat returns. Dylan was a 20-year-old college student who woke up to sounds in her house and encountered a masked figure. She didn't know her roommates were dead. She didn't know if the person was still in the house. She didn't know if making noise, making a call, would bring him back to her. So she waited, in terrified silence, until morning, until it felt safer, until she could try to understand what had happened. These young women didn't just survive that night. They inherited the burden of it. Every detail they remembered became evidence. Every moment they replayed became testimony. Every decision they made or it didn't make became subject to public scrutiny. They couldn't move on because they were needed to move the case forward. They couldn't grieve privately because their experience was part of a public investigation. And when people speculated about why they were spared, they had to live with the knowledge that randomness, exhaustion, timing, or some calculation they'll never understand had separated them from their friends by mere feet and moments. The legal process moved with the speed of continental drift. Kohberger was extradited to Idaho in early January 2023. He appeared before a judge who read the charges. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felony burglary, the potential for a death sentence. His defense team immediately began fighting on multiple fronts. They challenged the evidence. They sought to have the death penalty removed from consideration. They filed motion after motion, as defense attorneys do when building a case. When Kohberger first appeared before the court in Idaho to face charges, the moment carried enormous weight. For young lives ended, families desperate for justice, a community demanding answers. Watch his demeanor. Watch what happens when someone accused of extreme violence is confronted with the formal machinery of justice.
Oh, we got it. We took care of it. Yep. You guys.
$50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life.
His expression is neutral, not defiant, not remorseful, just blank. He stands in his red jail jumpsuit, hands often clasped behind his back or at his sides. He responds when spoken to directly, confirms he understands the charges, confirms he understands his rights. But there's a stillness to him that's almost unnerving. No visible emotion, no breakdown, no dramatic reaction, just compliance with procedure. This pattern would continue through every court appearance. As the case progressed, as evidence mounted, as families filled courtrooms hoping for answers or at least for the acknowledgement of seeing him face consequences, Kohberger remained a cipher, silent, still, present in body but seemingly absent in any emotional sense. Cameras captured every moment of these appearances, and the public watched closely, trying to read something in his face. Guilt, fear, remorse, anything. But he gave them nothing. The defense argued for a change of venue, citing pretrial publicity. How could their client get a fair trial in a small community where everyone knew someone affected by the murders? The prosecution argued that moving the trial would burden the victims' families who lived in the area. The judge ultimately sided with the defense. The trial would be moved to Boise, Idaho's capital, several hours south. A larger jury pool, more distance from the immediate trauma. Status hearings became routine. Legal arguments about evidence, about timelines, about what could be said publicly. The case that had exploded into national consciousness was now grinding through the slow machinery of the justice system. Each hearing was another reminder that justice and closure operate on different timelines.
All right.
All right, good morning. We are on the record. 29222805. This is State of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. Mr. Kohberger is in custody. He is appearing here in court with his attorneys, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Logsdon, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings appearing on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for the preliminary hearing status conference. So I am going to inquire of counsel. Ms. Taylor, what's the status at this time?
Thank you, Your Honor. We are going to ask the court to set preliminary hearing out into June. We would request the 3rd or 4th week of June and probably 4 or 5 days for preliminary hearing. Mr. Kohberger understands his right to a timely preliminary hearing, and he's willing to waive the timeliness to allow us time to obtain discovery in this case and be prepared.
And Mr. Thompson, are you in agreement with that?
The state has no objection to that, Your Honor. And Ms. Taylor reached out to us by email yesterday with her proposal. On reflection, the state's calendar would be better in the month of July, but we will make the end of June work if that's the court's preference. And I haven't had a chance to talk with Ms. Taylor about that. I'm sorry, I know that's last minute.
That's okay. The court's calendar is going to be better towards the end of June, early July. So would that work, Ms. Taylor, for your scheduling on your other matters?
Your Honor, yes. If we take that 4th week in June, that's actually best.
Okay. So, Mr. Kohberger, I need to speak to you for a moment then. Sir, you do understand, and Ms. Taylor has represented here, that she's advised you of your right to have, or fully discussed with you the right that you have, which is to have your preliminary hearing within 14 days of the date that you initially appeared before this court. As you recall, when I advised you of your rights, that hearing is a probable cause hearing where the state has to establish that more likely than not, these felony offenses were committed and you were the one that committed the felony offenses. If you waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing, it does not mean that you're giving up your right to have a preliminary hearing. It simply means that you would not be able to come back and challenge that the state did not present probable cause within 14 days. Do you understand?
Yes.
Have you had enough time to speak with Ms. Taylor about your decision to waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing?
Yes.
Do you need any additional time to do so?
No.
Then I will ask at this time, as to the 5 counts, felony counts that were charged in the criminal complaint that was filed on December 29th of 2022, are you waiving your right to a speedy preliminary hearing and agreeing that that hearing can be held outside the 14-day period?
Yes.
And Ms. Taylor, do you concur with his waiver?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you.
I will find your waiver of speedy preliminary hearing is knowing, intelligently, voluntarily entered here in open court with the assistance of counsel. We will go ahead and set the matter for a preliminary hearing. Beginning Monday, June 26th at 9:00 a.m. And I will go ahead and reserve the week, so June 26th to June 30th, in the event that we need all 5 days for presentation of evidence. And just so counsel knows, it will begin at 9 a.m. each of those days. Is there anything further to address at this time in the case, Mr. Thompson?
Not from the state's perspective, Your Honor, no.
All right. Or Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kohberger, then you will be remanded into custody on your same no bail at this point in time, pending further proceedings. Again, we'll send notice out to counsel, and we will be in recess for this morning.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Months turn into years. Motion hearings, status conferences, arguments about DNA evidence collection methods, arguments about whether certain statements could be admitted. The families attended when they could, watching the man accused of killing their children sit silently while lawyers argued technicalities. The process was necessary, but excruciating. Every delay meant more waiting, more living in limbo between tragedy and resolution. Then, June 30th, 2025, almost 3 years after the murders, an announcement that shocked many who'd been following the case. Kohberger had accepted a plea deal. He would plead guilty to all charges. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of burglary. In exchange, the death penalty would be taken off the table. He would receive life without parole. He would waive his right to appeal. Some families were outraged. The Goncalves family in particular had wanted the death penalty. They had wanted the maximum possible consequence. But prosecutors made a calculation based on practicality and certainty. A trial could take months, could potentially result in appeals lasting decades, could risk a jury failing to reach unanimous agreement on the death penalty, as juries sometimes do. This way, there would be certainty for life sentences, no possibility of parole, no possibility of appeals changing the outcome years down the road. July 2nd, 2025. Kohberger entered his guilty plea in a Boise courtroom. The judge asked him directly, specifically, about each victim. Did you kill Kaylee Goncalves willingly, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought? Yes. Did you kill Madison Mogen willingly, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought? Yes. Did you kill Xana Kernodle willingly, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought? Yes. Did you kill Ethan Chapin willingly, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought? Yes. For confirmations, for acknowledgments, for lies he admitted to taking with full knowledge and intent. The families heard him say it. After years of silence, after refusing to discuss the case, he confirmed what they already knew but needed to hear. He did this. He chose this. He was responsible. July 23rd, 2025. 3 weeks after the guilty plea. The sentencing hearing. This was the moment families have been waiting for. Not just to hear the sentence, which had already been determined by the plea agreement, but to speak, to be heard, to tell Kohberger and the world and anyone paying attention what had been taken from him. Bethany Funk, one of the survivors, chose to have a statement read on her behalf by a friend. Listen to what it means to survive something like this, to carry the weight of being the one who lived.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be speaking on behalf of Bethany, and so, yeah, here it reads. My name is Bethany Funk, and I was roommates with Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. I not only lost some of my best friends, but I also lost a sister. Never in a million years would I have thought that something like this would have happened to my closest friends. I thought that we were going to wake up and go upstairs, see them and tell them how they had scared us and that they were going to tease us about how we are constantly scaredy cats. I make jokes about it as we would go to Taco Bell like always. But sadly, that is not what happened and what turned out to be my worst nightmare. When I first woke up that morning, I had no idea what happened. I woke up around 7 with a terrible toothache, so I called my dad, who is a dentist, and he asked what I should do. He told me to take Advil, so I did, and I went back to sleep. I was still out of it and still didn't know what happened. If I had known, I of course would have called 911 right away. I still carry so much regret and guilt for not knowing what had happened and not calling right away, even though I understand it wouldn't have changed anything, not even if the paramedics had been right outside the door. I was so frantic that morning and scared to death, not knowing what had happened. And when I made the 911 call, I couldn't even get out the words. And from then on, I don't remember a thing. It was like my brain wiped that whole memory. That was the worst day of my life. And I know it always will be. While I was still in shock, trying to process the fact that my friends were truly gone, I had been attacked by the public. I was grieving, numb, and unsure of what had happened was even real. And at the same time, I was getting flooded with death threats and hateful messages from people who did not know me at all or know the dynamic of our friendship. Social media made it so much worse, and strangers made up stories to entertain themselves. The media harassed not just me, but also my family. People showed up at our house. They called my phone, my parents' phones, other family members' phones, and we were chased while I was still trying to survive emotionally and grieve the loss of my friends. I hated and still hate that they are gone, but for some reason, I am still here and I got to live. I still think about this every day. Why me? Why did I get to live and not them? For the longest time, I could not even look at their families without feeling sick with guilt. I did not know what to say or what to do. I was terrified that my presence just made their pain worse, and I was still here when their kid, their siblings and their friends, their loved ones should have been here instead. After everything happened, I was afraid to go into my own backyard or alone in my house. I was scared that the person who did this would come for me next. I was always scared that the media would try to catch me at any moment of any day, even when I was just walking around my house. I made my parents close all the blinds during the day so no one could see me even in the slightest chance. I barely left the house, and when I did, I made sure I was never alone. I slept in my parents' room for almost a year. I made them double lock every door, set an alarm, and still check everywhere in the room just in case someone was hiding. And I still check my room every night before, and I double lock it. I have not slept through a single night since this happened. I constantly wake up in panics, terrified. Someone is breaking in, or someone is here to hurt me, or I'm about to lose someone else that I love. The fear never really leaves. For a long time, I could barely get out of bed, but one day I realized I have to live for them. They did not get the chance to keep living, but I do, and I will not take that for granted. So now every day I remind myself to live for them, and everything I do it with them in mind. I am still scared to go out in public, but I force myself to do things because I know that they would want me to keep living my life to the fullest. I am beyond blessed to still be here, and I refuse to take that for granted when they did not get a chance. Our house was not just a house, it was a home. It was where we laughed till we couldn't breathe, make meals, did crafts, binge watch reality shows, played games, and spent lazy days on the couch. It was movie nights, wine nights, morning debriefs, pranks, hot chocolate, cookies, and warmth. I will cherish those memories forever, and I will not let what happened erase how special our home was or how much those memories meant to me.
The statement speaks of constant fear, of anxiety that doesn't fade with time, but becomes woven into the fabric of daily existence, of a life fundamentally altered by events beyond her control, of checking locks compulsively, of startling at unexpected sounds, of the impossibility of feeling safe in spaces that should be safe, of guilt that makes no logical sense but feels crushing anyway. Survivor's guilt. The question that haunts. Why am I still here when they're not? What made me different? What spared me? The trauma isn't just about that night. It's about every night after, every moment of being alone, every time someone walks behind her unexpectedly, every news story about violence that triggers the memories. It's about lost innocence in the most profound way. The knowledge that safety is an illusion, that horror can arrive without warning, that the world contains people capable of things we don't want to believe. Dylan Mortensen chose to speak herself. After years of silence, after endless speculation and judgment from people who weren't there, she stood before the court. This was the first time she spoke publicly about that night, and her words carried the weight of years of holding this inside.
Next is Dylan Mortensen. We're asking for some accommodations for Miss Mortensen and that she be allowed to sit in my seat. Sure. Dylan, just take your time, all right?
Sorry. Thank you, Your Honor. What happened that night changed everything. Because of him, four beautiful, genuine, compassionate people were taken from this world for no reason. He didn't just take their lives. He took the light they carried it into every room. He took away how they made everyone feel safe, loved, and full of joy. He took away the ability for me to tell them that I love them and that I'm so proud of them. He took away who they were becoming and the futures they were going to have. He took away birthdays, graduations, celebrations, and all the memories that we were supposed to make. All of it is gone. And all the people who loved them are just left to carry that weight forever. He didn't just take them from the world. He took them from me, my friends, my people who felt like my home, the people I looked up to and adored more than anyone. He took away my ability to trust the world around me. What he did shattered me in places I didn't know could break. I was barely 19 when he did this. We had just celebrated my birthday at the end of September. I should have been figuring out who I was. I should have been having the college experience and starting to establish my future. Instead, I was forced to learn how to survive the unimaginable. I couldn't be alone. I had to sleep in my mom's bed because I was too terrified to close my eyes. Terrified that if I blinked, someone might be there. I made escape plans everywhere I went. If something happens, how do I get out? What can I use to defend myself? Who can help? And then there are the panic attacks. The kind that slam into me like a tsunami out of nowhere. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't stop shaking. All I can do is scream because the emotional pain and the grief is too much to handle. My chest feels like it's caving in. Sometimes I drop to the floor with my heart racing, convinced something is very wrong. It's far beyond anxiety. It's my body reliving everything over and over again. My nervous system never got the message that it is over, and it won't let me forget what he did to them. People call me strong. They say I'm a survivor, but they don't see what my new reality looks like. They don't see the panic attacks, the hypervigilance, the exhaustion, the way I scan every room I enter, the way I flinch at sudden sounds. They don't know how heavy it is to carry so much pain and still be expected to keep going, and that's because of him. He stole parts of me I may never get back. He took the version of me who didn't constantly ask, what if it happens again? What if next time I don't survive?
He may have shattered parts of me, but I'm still putting myself back together. Piece by piece, I'm learning how to live in this new version of life. It is not easy. It hurts, but I'm still trying. Still trying, and I'm not trying just for me. I'm trying for them, my friends. About a year ago, I had a dream about them. I got to say goodbye. I told them I won't be able to see you again, so I need to tell you goodbye. They all kept asking why, and all I could say was, I can't tell you, but I have to. When I woke up, I felt shattered and heartbroken, but also strangely grateful. Like maybe in some way that dream gave us the goodbye we never got. Still, no dream can replace them, and no goodbye will ever feel finished. He is a hollow vessel, something less than human. A body without empathy, without remorse. He chose destruction. He chose evil. He feels nothing. He tried to take everything from me. My friends, my safety, my identity, my future. He took their lives, but I will continue trying to be like them, to make them proud. Living is how I honor them. Speaking today is to help me find some sort of justice for them. And I will never let him take that from me. He may have taken so much from me, but he will never get to take my voice. He will never take the memories I had with them. He will never erase the love we shared, the laughs we had, or the way they made me feel seen and whole. Those things are mine. They are sacred, and he will never touch them. I get to feel sadness. I get to feel rage. I get to feel joy even when it's hard. I get to feel love even when it hurts. I get to live. And while I will still live with this pain, at least I get to live my life. He will stay here, empty, forgotten, and powerless.
John, thank you so much for your courage.
Her voice shakes, but doesn't break. She describes the impossible weight of memory, of seeing something and not fully understanding what it meant until it was too late to stop it, of carrying the knowledge that she was feet away from her friends when they died and she didn't know, couldn't know, of people questioning her actions, her timeline, her decisions when she was simply trying to survive a situation no one should ever have to survive. She speaks directly to the experience of being judged by those who have never faced terror, who have never had their nervous system make decisions that their conscious mind only understands in retrospect. She owns her survival without apology, but also without joy, because surviving isn't winning. It's just continuing with a burden that never fully lifts. She makes clear that she will carry this forever, that there's no moving past it, only moving forward with it. Kaylee Goncalves' older sister, Olivia, had words specifically for Kohberger. Direct, unflinching. Watch what happens when grief transforms into something harder and colder than rage.
Hello, I'd like to start by thanking the court for allowing me the time and opportunity to speak today. My name is Olivia, and I'm the big sister of Kaylee Goncalves, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogen as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief, I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be. Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would, that I would fight for them, that I would show up no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them. And not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance. If I could gather enough heartbreak or love or sacrifice or whatever it took to get just one message across. What would I say? Throughout this entire process, I've written my feelings down at every moment, my wishes, my love, my denial, my anger. And as one final act of love, I'd planned to read these thoughts, even jarring and discombobulating and not even making sense. Because for me, that was true love. As bare and as naked as it could be, not laced in pretty words or dressed for the occasion, but written through bleary eyes at 2 a.m. with clenched fists, angry at this reality. My true final act of love was to continue on without them, for them. That dream to read aloud my love to them, to bring meaning through pain, was the latest blow in realizing you don't deserve it. And Kaylee and Maddie don't need it. Kaylee and Maddie have always known my love, and they would never ask me to prove it by further victimizing myself to a defendant who has shown no guilt, no remorse, no apprehension. They would say to me, "Why would you give the satisfaction of showing vulnerability now? You promised you would never back down." And for that clarity, I'm thankful. I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast. Instead, I will call you what you are. Sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows? Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card? How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime.
Olivia looks directly at Kohberger as she speaks, maintains eye contact, refuses to look away or show any sign of intimidation. She calls him exactly what she sees: a sociopath, a psychopath, a murderer. But more than that, She calls him insignificant. She tells him that nobody is impressed by what he did. Nobody is afraid of him now. Nobody thinks he's important or special or worthy of attention beyond the legal consequences. Her words are surgical, cutting through any possibility that he might view himself as significant or notorious. She reduces him to exactly what he is, someone who destroyed lives and will now be forgotten in a cell while the world moves on. She tells him that when people talked about this case, they talked about Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. Not about him. He was just a person who ended their stories, but he didn't define their stories. When she finishes, the courtroom applauds. It's a rare moment where emotion breaks through the formal decorum of court proceedings. The judge allows it, because some moments transcend procedure. Some statements deserve that recognition. Madison Mogen's father, Ben, spoke about his daughter with a grief so profound that words almost fail to contain it. Watch what it looks like when a parent tries to express the impossible loss of a child.
Now it's Ben Mogen, Maddie Mogen's father.
I'm Benjamin Mogen. I'm Maddie's dad. And first I just want to say thanks to all the people that helped bring this all to a close. I know it's not the resolution that everyone wanted, but I think that that everyone worked so hard, and we really appreciate all their efforts. It was such a hard thing to go through for everybody. Maddie was my only child that I ever had. She's the only great thing I ever really did, and the only thing I was really ever proud of. And I thought we would have the rest of our lives together to be together and to know each other, and I took for granted the times she was in college, and I thought, oh well, we'll have the rest of our lives to do all the stuff that we're supposed to do, and she was just about done. She actually earned all of her credits for her college degree, and Karen and Scotty and I got to go and get her diploma that she actually earned, and she deserved every bit of that. And but I thought that was going to be just the beginning of a long life together, and we never got that. Karen and Scotty did such a great job raising her after Karen and I split up, and I'm so thankful for Scotty and the role that he played in her life when I wasn't able to. But we got to spend a lot of great times together, Maddie and I. She was my favorite person to go to a concert with. We got to see some fun shows together, and I told her, if there's ever a show that you want to go to, let me know, and I'll get you tickets for you and your friend, or if we want to go together, we'll make it happen. And my favorite memory with her was when the Mac Miller show sold out here in Spokane, and everyone wanted tickets, no one could get them, and on the last day before the show, they did a radio thing, and I got 4 meet and greet tickets for Maddie and her friends, and me to go and see the show, and that was her favorite artist at the time was Mac Miller, and he's gone now too. And my little cousin Zach drove us all there that night, and he's gone too, tragically. And anyway, the last thing that she ever wrote to me was this Father's Day card, and I'm so glad I still have it. I'm just going to read what she said. It says, "Happy Father's Day. I hope you have the best day. I can't wait till we can hang out again soon. I'll be in Coeur d'Alene, 624 to 74. Hopefully we can find a time then. I loved your birthday card that you sent me, by the way. Maybe we can see a concert sometime soon. I'd love to see the gorge when it's not so smoky out. I hope you're doing well. I'm proud of how far you've come. Thank you for always encouraging me to do my best. Love you lots and lots. Love, Maddie May." She did encourage me to not just to do my best, but to live on. I went through a lot of issues with addiction and with substance abuse, and when I wasn't wanting to live anymore, she was what would keep me from just not caring anymore, and knowing that she was out there and that she was just such a beautiful person kept me alive a lot of rough moments, and I'm so glad that she was able to meet Jake. He was the only one that I actually ever got to take her to the gorge. They went and saw Watershed together, and yeah, they had a heck of a time. I'm glad she got to. That's a really special place for me, and she always wanted to work out there with me in the summer sometime. And she never got to, but at least she got to see it once with Jake. He was such a great guy. He is such a great guy. And I really wanted to see what a future with them would have looked like. I'll never be able to replace her. I wrote a bunch of stuff. I just don't know what to say right now. I just miss her so much, and I just love her more than anything. And this shouldn't have happened. And a death sentence is one thing. You know when it's going to happen, and it's going to be all gentle and stuff. But life without parole, with a building full of people that all just want you to not be around anymore, and winking at every morning, not knowing if that's the day they're going to pull your card. I mean, it's not a very nice sentence either. So, I don't know. I just love you, Maddie, and I wish you were still here.
He describes Madison's final semester, how she had already earned all the credits needed for her degree, how she was so close to graduation, just weeks away, how her future was tangible, real, waiting for her. She had a job lined up in Texas, had plans to move, had dreams that were about to become reality, and how it all ended in a moment of senseless violence that she never saw coming. He wipes his eyes as he speaks. His voice breaks multiple times. But he continues because this is the only chance he has to make sure the court and the world knows who his daughter was beyond being a victim, beyond a name in a news story. She was someone who brought joy, who loved her family fiercely, who had already accomplished so much and had so much more to accomplish. She was real. She mattered. She was loved. Family after family spoke. Ethan Chapin's relatives describing a young man who was kind and funny and brought lightness wherever he went. Xana Kernodle's father and sister talking about a woman who made everyone feel like her best friend. Madison's stepfather and mother and grandmother adding layers to the picture of who she was. Kaylee's father turning to address Kohberger directly, calling him a complete joke, refusing to give him any power. Each statement was a different reflection of the same unfillable void. Some expressed rage. Some offered measured statements. One family member even extended forgiveness, though they made absolutely clear it would never mean forgetting and it would never mean what he did was anything other than monstrous. The range of responses showed that there is no single way to grieve, no correct way to survive this kind of loss. Each family processes tragedy in their own way, and all of those ways are valid. Through it all, Kohberger sat motionless, his lawyers flanking him, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the formal suits around him. When given the opportunity to speak, to explain, to offer anything that might help these families understand why, he declined. Respectfully, he told the judge he would not be speaking. The word respectfully felt almost obscene in context. What respect had he shown their children? But he said nothing more. The families received no explanation, no apology, no insight into why their loved ones were chosen, no closure that might come from understanding, even if understanding doesn't equal acceptance. The prosecutor later said he didn't trust Kohberger to tell the truth about his motive anyway, that anything he might say would be self-serving, calculated, designed to serve his own purposes rather than provide genuine answers. So perhaps the silence was better than lies, but left a void, a permanent question mark hanging over everything. The judge delivered the sentence that had already been agreed upon in the plea deal, but his words carried weight beyond the legal formula. This was the formal conclusion to a case that had gripped the nation for nearly 3 years.
All right, does the defense have evidence to present today?
No evidence.
All right. Does defense wish to make argument today?
Runner, we do not wish to make arguments. Mr. Kohberger, along with his legal team, is prepared for the court to enter judgment.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, you have an opportunity to make a statement if you wish to. I take it you are declining.
I respectfully decline.
Well. Please. All right, let me start this morning by acknowledging and thanking those that have come here today in support of their loved ones, and I appreciate your courage and your strength. And I hope that you are able to move on as best as possible. Thank counsel for the professionalism that they've exhibited throughout this case. It has been my great honor to preside in this case and to help bring, to the extent possible, some resolution and hopefully justice to this case. During the quiet morning hours of November 13, 2022, a faceless coward breached the tranquility of 6 beautiful young people and senselessly slaughtered them, 4 of them. Who committed this unspeakable evil was unknown for several weeks, but due to the killer's incompetence and outstanding police work by numerous local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, the person that slithered through that sliding glass door at 1122 King Road now stands before the world and this court unmasked. This unfathomable and senseless act of evil has caused immeasurable pain and loss. No parent should ever have to bury their child. This is the greatest tragedy that can be inflicted upon a person. Parents who took their children to college in a truck filled with moving boxes had to bring them home in hearses lined with coffins. The loss this killer inflicted was not just the death of these people's children, siblings, grandchildren, as we've heard today. It has ripped a hole in their soul, destroying a special part of their very essence. Any person who is a parent defines themselves foremost as such. It is their existence and purpose of being. And it has been stolen from these parents. None of us have experienced the loss these victims have in the unspeakable way that they have. And therefore, none of us can, nor should we, question the way in which they have handled their loss. Whether that be in private mourning, removed as far as possible from this media circus, or in front of a camera demanding retribution with the loudest megaphone. I've listened intently to the stories and pain that have been shared today, with great awe at the courage and resilience of the surviving family members of those wonderful children. I've listened also to the surviving roommates, both in person and through their friends. And I can't think of how, frankly, courageous they have been despite the hell that they have faced by uncaring people who have come up with all kinds of crazy theories about two kids simply being kids. The parents, siblings, and other family members who have spoken today are designated as victims in our legal system. But going forward, I hope that they can shed that label, as it gives too much power to the evil that condemned them to that role. They are and should be known as survivors, fighters, and foremost as witnesses to the tremendous lives of value and unbounded promise of these four young people. But those speaking today and those who did not speak, but who carry the same burden, this same loss, now carry forward the memories of these now perpetually young people, these forever children. These survivors carry the responsibility of ensuring that the voices of these children, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, are never forgotten, and the positive impacts that they have had on so many lives are never minimized, and that the love they shared, the light that they shined onto others, is forever celebrated. As we sit here today, this case is ending, and we are now certain who committed these unspeakable acts of evil, but we don't know, and what we may never know is why. I share the desire expressed by others to understand the why. But upon reflection, it seems to me, and this is just my own opinion, that by continuing to focus on why, we continue to give Mr. Kohberger relevance. We give him agency and we give him power. The need to know what is inherently not understandable makes us dependent upon the defendant to provide us with a reason, and that gives him the spotlight, the attention, and the power he appears to crave. Yet even if I could force him to speak, which legally I cannot, how could anyone ever be assured that what he speaks is the truth? Do we really believe, after all of this, he's capable of speaking the truth or of giving up something of himself to help the very people whose lives he destroyed? Rather, I suspect the so-called reason would be dished out in enticing, self-serving, and aggrandizing, untruthful bits, leaving people wanting more information, more insight, and thus enhancing even further the power he seeks to hold. Even if we could get truthful insight into his why, I suspect it would not in any way quench one's thirst for actually understanding why in the first instance.
Judge Stephen Hippler acknowledged that Kohberger's motive might never be known, that families would live with unanswered questions forever, that this conclusion to the legal process was not the same as closure, and perhaps there would never be true closure for losses this profound. But he could provide what the law allows. for consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, an additional 10 years for the burglary count, $50,000 fines for each murder count, $5,000 in civil penalties. The numbers are precise. The legal language is exact. But behind every number is a life ended, a family destroyed, a future erased. The judge also noted something significant. This ended Kohberger's 15 minutes of fame. The phrase was pointed. This case had become a media sensation. Kohberger's face had been broadcast worldwide. True crime enthusiasts had dissected every detail. But now it was over. He would disappear into the prison system, would be forgotten by the public that had watched so closely, would become just another inmate serving life, would lose the attention that some speculated he might have been seeking. If notoriety was part of his motivation, the judge was making clear that chapter was closed. Bryan Kohberger is now inmate 163214 at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution in Kuna. He lives in solitary confinement 23 hours a day, 1 hour of outdoor recreation, showers every other day. He has access to commissary, where he can purchase items with money from his prison account. He has access to religious services within the constraints of his confinement. He can use communication systems to contact approved individuals. But he will never leave that facility. He is 30 years old now. He will likely live decades in that cell, growing old in isolation, his life reduced to the bare minimum of existence. After sentencing, hundreds of police documents were released, finally giving the public access to details that had been sealed during the investigation and legal proceedings. They revealed more about Kohberger's behavior in the months before the murders, about his internet search history, which included searches for Ted Bundy, the serial killer known for targeting young women, searches for Britney Spears' song Criminal, which some found oddly specific, and searches related to the Idaho murders before they'd even been widely publicized, suggesting he was monitoring coverage of his own actions. The documents revealed conversations with classmates where he discussed criminal decision-making with what seemed like more than academic interest, where he asked questions about emotions involved in committing crimes, where he seemed to be probing beyond theoretical understanding into something more personal. Classmates who'd found him odd, but not threatening before suddenly reinterpreted those conversations through a darker lens. The documents also detailed the genealogical investigation that led to his identification. The FBI had used databases where people voluntarily upload their DNA for ancestry purposes. They found distant relatives of Kohberger, built a family tree, narrowed down possibilities. This technique has been controversial in legal circles. Some argue it violates privacy expectations because people who submitted DNA never consented to law enforcement use. Others argue it's a powerful tool for justice. The debate continues, but in this case, it worked. It identified someone who otherwise might never have been caught because he had no prior criminal record. But none of it answers the fundamental question that haunts everyone who follows this case. Why? Why those 4 students? Why that house? Why that night? Prosecutors confirmed that Kohberger's phone had been near the King Road location 23 times between July and November of 2022. He had been circling, observing, learning patterns perhaps, but there was no personal connection to the victims discovered in the investigation. No prior relationship, no interaction that anyone could find, no obvious motive that explained the extreme violence. Some speculated he was practicing, that these murders were meant to be the beginning of something, that he wanted to know what it felt like to kill, that his academic interest in criminal behavior had evolved into something darker. But these are just speculations. Kohberger has never explained himself, may never explain himself, and even if he did, would the explanation satisfy? Would any reason make sense? Some things defy rational understanding because they originate from a place beyond rationality. In January 2026, families of the victims filed lawsuits against Washington State University. They argue that warning signs have been missed, that complaints about Kohberger's behavior with female students, specifically about him trying to use his status as a teaching assistant to inappropriately interact with female students, hadn't been properly addressed. that there have been concerns raised that should have triggered closer scrutiny, that institutional accountability matters even after the criminal case concludes. The legal battles continue in different forms. Because while criminal justice has been served, other questions about responsibility and prevention remain. The King Roadhouse where the murders occurred has been demolished. The university purchased it. Families of the victims wanted it gone, wanted to erase the physical reminder of what happened there. The structure was torn down piece by piece. The land cleared. But everyone in Moscow knows what stood there. Memory doesn't demolish as easily as buildings. The University of Idaho created a memorial garden for the victims, a space for reflection, for remembering. On the 3rd anniversary of the murders, students gathered there for a moment of silence. Life continues in Moscow. Students still attend classes. People still go about their daily routines. But it continues differently, with an awareness that safety is more fragile than anyone wants to believe. With the knowledge that this place, this peaceful college town, experienced something terrible. Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk continue their lives away from public view, as they have every right to do. They've given their statements. They've fulfilled their roles as witnesses. They've carried burdens no one their age should have to carry. Now, they deserve the privacy to heal, if healing is even possible after surviving something like that. They deserve to not be defined by the worst night of their lives. They deserve to be more than survivors in perpetuity. The families continue to speak their loved ones' names. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. They refuse to let those names be overshadowed by the name of the person who killed them. They share memories on social media. They keep their children's presence alive in the world through stories and photographs and scholarships established in their names and advocacy for victims' rights. They make sure that when people think about this case, they think first about the lives lost, not about the person who took them. Here's what this case forces us to confront, what it asks us to sit with even when it's uncomfortable. We want criminals to be obviously different from us. We want warning signs to be clear and unmistakable. We want to believe that we would recognize danger if it sat next to us on a traffic stop, or walked past us in a store, or lived in the same community, or attended the same university. We want to believe that evil announces itself in obvious ways. But Bryan Kohberger challenges all of that. He was a PhD student pursuing advanced education. He had no criminal record, not even minor infractions. He was described as awkward and socially uncomfortable, yes, but not violent, not threatening. He functioned in society right up until the moment he decided to take 4 lives. He taught undergraduate classes. He attended academic conferences. He had conversations with colleagues about research and dissertations. He was, by all outward appearances, someone working toward a legitimate career in criminology. And that's the truly unsettling part, the decision. Because this wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a spontaneous act born from immediate emotion. It was planned, methodical. He drove to that house knowing what he intended to do. He brought a weapon specifically designed for lethality. He wore clothing to minimize evidence. He wore a mask to conceal identity. He moved through rooms, making calculated choices about who lived and who died, because he passed Dylan without harming her. And then he drove away and went shopping as if he'd simply run an errand. The question isn't just why he did it, though that question matters. The deeper question is how someone makes that choice and then continues as though they're still part of normal society. How does someone compartmentalize that completely? How does someone kill 4 people and then stand in a Costco line holding groceries? How does someone drive across the country with their father, engaging in small talk about the scenery and holiday plans, while carrying the weight of what they've done? And if someone can do that, if someone can maintain that level of separation between their actions and their presentation, how do we ever really know who poses danger and who doesn't? We like to think we'd sense it, that we'd feel something off, that our instincts would warn us. But the reality is that dangerous people often hide in plain sight, specifically because they can mimic normalcy so effectively. They've learned what behaviors are expected. They've learned how to blend. They've learned that the best camouflage is ordinariness. There's no satisfying answer to these questions. The case is closed legally. Kohberger will never leave prison. The families have spoken. The victims are memorialized. Justice, in its legal definition, has been served. But the discomfort remains. The questions linger. Because this happened in a place that felt safe. It happened to people who were simply living their lives. They weren't involved in anything dangerous. They weren't taking risks. They were college students sleeping in their beds. And it happened because one person decided it would happen. That possibility exists anywhere. In any town, on any street, in any home where people sleep believing they're safe. Time has moved forward since November 13th, 2022. More than 3 years now. For some who followed the case intensely, it's become another entry in the true crime catalog. Another case studied and discussed and eventually filed away as the next tragic story captures attention. For others, for the families and friends and community members directly impacted, it remains an open wound that will never fully heal. The difference between those perspectives is everything. Bryan Kohberger's 15 minutes of fame, as the judge put it, are over. He'll spend decades in a cell, likely forgotten by most of the world that once watched his every court appearance. The public's attention is finite. New cases will emerge. New tragedies will unfold. His name will fade from headlines. But he'll never be forgotten by the families whose lives he destroyed. He'll never be forgotten by the survivors who have to rebuild their sense of safety from nothing. He'll never be forgotten by the community that learned horror can arrive on an ordinary Sunday morning in November. Justice happened. The legal system worked as it's designed to work, imperfect though that system may be. Evidence was gathered painstakingly over months. An arrest was made based on solid forensic evidence. A guilty plea was entered. A sentence was delivered. The procedural requirements were met. But justice and healing aren't the same thing. Justice is procedural, bound by rules and timelines and legal definitions. Healing is personal, individual, and takes longer than any court timeline. For some, healing may never fully come. For others, it means learning to carry grief without being crushed by it. If you take anything from this case, let it be this. Pay attention to the people around you, not with paranoia or suspicion, but with genuine care and awareness. Check in on friends who seem isolated or struggling. Notice when behavior shifts in concerning ways. Create communities where people feel connected rather than alone. Because while we can't prevent every tragedy, while we can't identify every dangerous person before they act, we can build societies where fewer people slip through the cracks into darkness. And remember the names that matter. Kaylee Goncalves, who loved her family fiercely and was days away from starting her dream career. Madison Mogen, who had earned her degree and was ready to take on the world. Xana Kernodle, who made everyone around her feel valued and seen. Ethan Chapin, whose lighthearted presence and goofy humor brought joy to every space he occupied. These are the names that deserve to be spoken. These are the lives that deserve to be remembered. These are the futures that were stolen. This has been Dark Trail Files. If this case made you think differently about safety, about justice, about the nature of evil hiding in plain sight, then you understand why we do this work. We're not here to sensationalize tragedy. We're here to bear witness, to tell the stories that matter, to make sure victims aren't reduced to statistics or footnotes in someone else's story. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we'll continue bringing you cases that challenge your understanding of human nature. Share this with someone who needs to hear these stories, who needs to be reminded that awareness and community matter. And remember that true crime is entertainment, even though it's often consumed as such. It's testimony. It's bearing witness to the worst moments of people's lives and honoring those moments by refusing to let them be forgotten. Until next time, stay aware, stay connected, stay present in your communities, check on the people around you, and never forget that every case we cover represents real people whose absence leaves permanent holes in the world. Their families wake up every day to that absence. Their friends carry memories that are simultaneously precious and painful, and we owe it to them to tell these stories with the gravity and respect they deserve. Thank you for watching Dark Trail Files.